People will swear up and down that Bleach isn't popular. Sometimes I don't know if the hate is real or not. When you get into the details, Bleach is a Shogakukan winner for excellence in writing, and even when the anime was done, it was still ranking in the top 5 of TV Tokyo. Bleach is a $7 billion franchise. I also want to rank in your top 5 one day. I'm a small but growing channel, focused on manga and anime. I do deep dives into Bleach, but I'm also adding more franchises to my list. We made it to 2,500 subs and I want to keep growing. So the next goal is 5,000 subscribers. So if you're new, drop a sub, turn on alerts. I love to talk, so don't be afraid to comment. I appreciate the support. Bleach is a powerhouse franchise. It's worthy of its big 3 status. But unlike any anime before, it does have a unique achievement. Ichigo doesn't just save the Soul Society, but Toonami as well. Television in 2026 is mostly irrelevant, but there are still surviving pockets of people dedicated to watching their favorite programs on TV. And with the rising cost of subscriptions and exclusive streaming rights, anime fans might find Toonami as the hot place to watch the newest debuting anime again. I have always believed Toonami was early, and then as the era changed, a bit too late. But consistency can still win in the end. Toonami has no streaming application, but for a late night TV block has found success. Toonami has produced original anime like Uzumaki, FLCL Progressive, Housing Complex C. Mind you, some have been a bit of a letdown, looking at you Uzumaki, yet still very impressive for what should be considered an outdated TV block. And all of that modern success, of course, can be attributed to the Toonami faithful and a team over at Cartoon Network that seems like they care, yet still, none of that is possible without Bleach. Bleach helped with the success of Adult Swim's action block as the Midnight Run went away and Toonami evolved away from the Absolution era into more of a toned-down version with Tom 4. The experimental phase of Adult Swim started. I view Bleach's importance in this era as if Dragon Ball Z was the face of the 90s, Bleach was the face of the mid-2000s and late-night TV. And before you disagree, hear me out. Bleach wasn't a part of the original or next-gen Toonami lineup. By the mid and late 2000s, the block and its host Tom has switched demographics. American television standards were shifting, and the edgier version of Toonami was no longer fit for the new era. The updated lineup featured censored versions of Zatch Bell, One Piece, and Bobo Bobo Bo. Say that 3 times fast. The block eventually being anchored by Naruto. These were lighthearted shows in a post 9/11 world that inspired wonder, strength, gave you a little bit of comedy, and purpose in a digestible format. The days of 8-year-old kids coming home to stories about galactic rebellions against greedy villains who want to take over the world, those days were over. That also when combined with the rise of the internet, online gaming, and a pick-your-own entertainment style culture, teens were making different choices, and Toonami was no longer their primary destination after school. The block did try to keep up with the times. Very early in the 2000s, they had the Jetstream Reactor, and it was very hard to stay relevant against pirate websites. The Jetstream Reactor offered a very limited list of anime. One of the ones I remember watching was Pat Labor, but in comparison to a pirate website with a large catalog and the only hurdle was watching in Japanese with subs, we're gonna pick the pirate website every single time. Yet, as one star was fading, another was emerging. Adult Swim was born with edgier anime marketed towards real anime fans. It moved away from children's programming and towards shows like Blood Plus, Black Lagoon, and Bleach. Bleach debuted in September 2006 as the flagship of the Saturday night Adult Swim action era. I am from this era. The marketing pushed an edgy show that didn't need to be censored like daytime anime. Bleach had the fashion, the aesthetic. The OST was unmatched by anything else on television at the time. Asterisk, the theme song was already iconic on debut because I was marketed right up until the first episode. Toonami was fading, if not faded. It was cartoonified and more censored than ever before. Naruto was simply not enough to hold the block by itself. Even Dragon Ball Z had a supporting cast of other shows making the Toonami block from the late 90s into the early 2000s successful. The formula was not forgotten. It was just moved to the Adult Swim action block, and it was out anchored by Bleach, which was led in with Trinity Blood, followed by Eureka 7 and Inuyasha. All of these shows are now cult classics with their own large or niche fan bases. This was the early lineup that brought major success to the network. So how do we get back to Toonami? How did Bleach birth a new late-night anime crowd strong enough to bring Toonami and Absolution back from retirement? Well, we have to look at 2012. Toonami had been gone for about 4 years. Adult Swim in this time had been managing one large audience that showed interest in shows like Family Guy and other eventual Adult Swim classics. The anime crowd was still there though. They watched those shows, but they also stuck around for the late night action anime block. On April 1st, 2012, they were finally rewarded. Fans like myself expected the usual Adult Swim joke. This was the typical screening of the cult classic film The Room. If you have not seen Tommy Wiseau in this film, The Room, do yourself a favor, skip it. Just watch a recap of it. In 2012, the movie started as planned. After only about a minute, the screen cut to black and faded into the familiar drum and bass of Absolution.
You're tearing me apart, Lisa!
Oh, hi, Adult Swim. I got the results of the test back. I definitely have April Fools.
This was a test by Cartoon Network. Bleach spent 2008 to 2012 essentially keeping the seat warm and the idea of Toonami in the minds of network executives. Bleach was a constant ratings juggernaut. It won viewership on late night Saturday nights. This combined with the early explosion of social media activity where on Twitter, the hashtag #BringBackToonami was trending worldwide. This was enough to fuel a single broadcast. Bleach established a stable foundation that allowed a joke to turn into a permanent resurrection just 2 months later. Without Ichigo, Rukia, Orihime, Chad, and Uryu holding down the midnight slot for years, Toonami could have been a permanent afterthought. Toonami coming back felt like a long-fought battle won. Bleach was a test of patience and loyalty. It rebirthed Toonami during the era of the Arrancar arc. On one hand, you had some of the most iconic moments in shonen history, Ichigo in his battles with Grimmjow, and then later in Wako Mundo with Ukiura. But on the other hand, you had a gross amount of filler. Bleach is a very direct story. The manga catching up with the anime was a real issue during the TV era. Bleach would take year-long detours before and after the Arrancar arc. We sat through the Bount arc, the new Captain Amagi arc, and the Zanpakuto Unknown Tales. Imagine watching weekly before we really knew what filler was, before filler guides existed. The internet had pirate websites with chat boxes, but nowhere near this level of homogenization. It wasn't until the manga scene in the West, or for me in the United States more specifically, took off that we realized that we were wasting time on parts of the story that didn't matter. However, even with the filler or knowledge of it, viewership stayed consistent regardless with Bleach. I believe it was trending on Twitter not too long ago about the massive number of views clips from the Bount arc had on YouTube. I'll take it a step further. I watched the entire Bount arc on MySpace Video. Bleach was taken that serious in the late 2000s and early 2010s. But Bleach earned that popularity and anchor status. We hated filler, but we loved Bleach. It consistently outperformed almost everything else on the block. In the early years when Toonami came back as a Saturday exclusive, Bleach was the reason people stayed tuned past midnight. Toonami was a vibe again. Bleach and other anime became the Saturday night ritual for a large group of fans. Anime piracy and websites existed, but homes with high-speed internet were not abundant. Toonami and Bleach filled the gap. I personally prefer watching late-night Toonami for shows I wanted to see, like Full Metal Alchemist. Watching them at home on my PC required me to load 3 tabs of the same website, episodes 1, 2, and 3, and then allow them to pre-buffer for almost 2 hours. And then the episodes were in like 240p or 480, which don't get me wrong, if you're pirating something, that's amazing. But being able to sit down, look at your TV, and watch something in high quality for free is an unbeatable experience. And Bleach was the primary reason that kept my eyes and many others glued to the TV on late Saturday nights. By May 2012, Toonami was back for good. Bleach was right there at the front of the line. The block evolved away from just an addition to Adult Swim or a placeholder. Tom was back on the Absolution, the packaging was updated, and the community was more active on social media. During this time, Bleach was airing the climax of the Fate Karakura Town arc. The climax of Bleach airing on Toonami as its lead show was a great payoff for years of waiting. Bleach dominated and helped restore Toonami, but the years after Aizen were here. In 2013 and 2014, Bleach was entering the Lost Asian arc, or what some call the Fullbringer arc. Bleach felt a little bit different. With knowledge of the manga ending in Japan, Bleach on Toonami felt like a ticking clock counting down to its final moments. Every Saturday night brought us closer to the final episode, and then during a time when we knew that there was nothing on the horizon, it just felt a little sad knowing that most of this was because Kubo was sick. So on November 1st, 2014, Bleach aired episode 366, titled Changing Hearts, Unchanging History. It was the end of an era on Toonami, and if you tuned in that night, Bleach received a hero's send-off. Bleach finished its Toonami run in 2014, but the fans weren't done with it. If you followed Toonami co-creator Jason DeMarco on X or Tumblr during this era, you saw it every single day. No matter what show was announced, the comments were flooded asking when Bleach was coming back. There was literally no new footage to air. the demand for Bleach became a cornerstone of the Toonami community identity. The hashtag #BringBackBleach showed that the audience had now outgrown the series. Fans were willing to be satisfied with reruns instead of anything new until there was actually something new to air for Bleach. And after years of fan animations, a special 20th anniversary live stream took place in March 2020. Keith Kubo and Studio Pierrot announced the 1,000-Year Blood War will finally be animated. The internet nearly broke with the announcement. For Toonami fans, the announcement was amazing. However, the reality was that it was no longer the late 2000s or the 2010s anymore. When the 1,000-Year Blood War anime was first announced, fans assumed it would naturally air on Toonami. But times were different. Disney and Hulu locked down the global streaming rights and put the show in streaming jail. And for over 2 years, Bleach was absent from television after its initial return. But behind the scenes, a deal was worked out between Viz Media and Adult Swim to bring the 1,000-Year Blood War back to television. And on May 17th, 2025, the 1,000-Year Blood War made its official Toonami premiere. Bleach was updated with a massive budget. It honestly felt nostalgic watching it on TV, but it also felt wonderfully out of place. The 4:3 aspect ratios and the constant filler arcs that slowed the action down were gone. Watching the Quincy invasion of Soul Society at 12:30 a.m. on Saturday night brought back energy to Toonami that hasn't been felt in years. With Toonami also airing episodes of Naruto and One Piece sporadically aside it felt like the Big Three era made another return to TV for one more run. Bleach has officially reclaimed its throne as the anchor show of Toonami with the return of the 1,000-Year Blood War. And it will continue its domination when Core 4 The Calamity airs in July 2026. I know television feels irrelevant in the modern era, but with pirate sites like High Anime collapsing, and like I said earlier, the rising cost of subscription fees, Toonami is right there. It's free, it's consistent, and it's a really great place to watch anime. Toonami really did shape anime in the West, especially for me here in the United States. I'm an original Toonami kid, from the Motor days all the way through the evolution of Tom. I was there when he signed off for the very last time, and I was also there on April 1st when Tom came back. I believe for the sake of nostalgia, when the final episode of Bleach airs, I'll catch it on Late Night Toonami. That's all from me. Thanks for watching. I'm Zaku Zealot. Subscribe, turn on alerts, hit all the bells and whistles to stay caught up, and peace out till next time.